So this, of course, is a question that a lot of people have been trying to comprehend. Climate change doesn't just mean soaring temperatures and a rise in the mean sea levels. The effects are actually far-reaching. Now, today we decode the topic of how climate change affects women way worse than how it affects men. Now, we've put aside the macro-level effects on our planet to look at how it affects on the small scale on our society. The scientists have been closely studying the aftermath of the weather catastrophes, from floods to droughts to cyclones to heat waves. And as one would expect, there is a lot in common. But there is one odd pattern that stands out and is consistent in every single natural disaster around the world. A thorough review has found that extreme weather patterns often result in episodes of gender-based violence, particularly physical, sexual and domestic abuse of women. So let's start with the basics. Some of these weather events affect the poor the most. Households with lower economic and social conditions are extremely vulnerable to weather phenomena. These people do not live in homes that are disaster-proof. In their hand-to-mouth living conditions, they hardly have the money to rebuild what was destroyed. And this pushes them into deep mental stress, substance abuse, and often food insecurity. And all this is, of course, a perfect cocktail for gender-based violence. So let's give you a few examples from what has been witnessed from different countries around the world. And let's start with Bangladesh, which is a very densely populated and a low-lying nation, which makes it prone to devastating floods year on year. And every time this has happened, what has been noticed is this: that girls are forced into marriage a lot earlier and even way before they attain the legal age to marry. Because for the poor families, this means one mouth less to feed. So the loss of crops or houses being washed away puts the future of these young girls in their future in danger. But remember, this is not an isolated incident. This is not something that is region specific, because women across the globe are more badly impacted due to climate change. Even people from gender minority groups are unfairly treated. Cyclone Winston that hit Fiji back in 2016 was seen as some kind of a divine rage against the LGBTQ community. This was in Fiji. And even in the United States of America, the country that takes pride in calling itself the leader of the free world, there's been a lot of focus with respect to this study to look at how climate change and climate disasters actually affect women and sexual minorities more. Consider this. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina was seen as a backlash against gay communities. The conservatives in the United States openly blamed the gay and lesbian couples for invoking the wrath of God that resulted in disaster and destruction via a hurricane. Now, many other cases have also been found where transgender people were threatened in relief shelters, or worse, even barred from access to essentials like relief supplies. The reasons that extreme weather events lead to gender-based violence vary across the globe and even differ between cultures. What a drought does to women in India is slightly different what it does to women in Africa. But women always end up suffering more. Now, this comprehensive analysis connects two issues and is a clear reminder for the world as to how greatly and variedly climate change affects our society. All right, now to help us try and decode this straightforward relationship between climate change and gender violence, we're being joined in by Maggie Rodriguez, who is a science and climate journalist, and she's joining us on this broadcast. Now, Ms. Rodriguez, this is something that not many people think about when they talk about climate change. The fact is, climate change affects everyone, but it affects women way more than the way it affects men.
True. So not just from the optics of gender-based violence, which is the issue that I reported about in this news piece that you cited from Nature. But in general, women are hit way harder because of climate change. So, for example, if we think about young girls and women who have to, for example, fetch water in different places in the African continent, in Asia. So they are the providers of water generally to their families. So with climate change, they will probably have to walk for longer and greater distances, and they are exposed to more danger. So even, the UN and many reports, they have pointed that out. So with less sources of water, women are more in danger of violence because, they're more exposed. And also, if we think here in Brazil, for example, if you have droughts, and we have had in the past few years in the southeast, like, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro region, we had a terrible drought in 2014, 2015, sort of. So women are the first to feel because they are the caregivers at home. So they depend on water to cook, to wash their clothes, to, treat children, to clean their houses. So they feel a lot more, when you don't have water. Of course, that's the lack of water affects everybody. But for those people who are at home and who are in charge of taking care of home, being without water is much worse.
Absolutely.
So, these are some of the ways that women feel more about climate change and droughts more specifically.
Absolutely,
besides
indeed. Now, Ms. Rodriguez, you've been tracking issues of climate change as a climate journalist. There's a lot of talk when it comes to international diplomacy where the world leaders, they all come together through various summits. They say that they are committed to ensuring that climate change is at least stopped, if not reversed. Now, the question that I want to ask you is there any kind of a policy initiative that is being taken, or at least being agreed upon, to address this specific issue, that climate change affects women much more, and therefore this also needs some kind of a policy to be put in place to ensure that women are not as badly impacted as it presently happens?
Internationally, it's a little hard to talk about that because the UN conversations, for example, they are focusing for now on the very, very basics. I mean, on the very minimum, the bare minimum that countries should do to ensure that, at least the minimum is done. And not even the minimum is being done, like currently. So if you think about that international fund of, I guess, $100 billion, if I'm not wrong, that should be distributed to the developing world, like to the poorest countries, to finance their adaptation and mitigation policies. It's not done. It's not there yet, at least not completely. Like the rich countries are not, they're not making their word, they're not concretizing their word yet on that. So, and this is the bare minimum.
I think that's an important point that you make, because when policies are being made, essentially what is being tried to attempt to be done is not to ensure that the climate does not go up, that the glaciers don't melt. This is what the focus has been on. But the fact is to have climate change affects women has not been on the agenda of these global leaders. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Rodriguez, for joining us from Brazil and sharing all those insights with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.